Storytime, I think I'm still possessed. When this happened, I 24 female was 16. I went out one night and told my mom I was sleeping at a friend's house, and she told her mom she would be at my house. We went to this awesome bonfire party in the woods, and it was great, until it wasn't. We clearly didn't think this plan through because after the party we had nowhere to sleep. So we stumbled around in the dark until we found a decent clearing and passed out. When I woke up and looked around, I was so afraid I puked all over myself. The trees were covered in bones, some with the flesh still hanging, and we were surrounded by symbols. I take the spiritual world very seriously, so I just wanted to get out of there. I woke my friend up, and this look of absolute terror flooded her face. When we locked eyes, she started screaming and begging me not to hurt her, but I didn't know what the fug she was talking about. Then, without thinking it, I dug my nails into the top of her head and dragged them all the way down her face. I was horrified at myself, and I ran. Yup, just left her there. I didn't stop running until I got home, and went straight to the bathroom. When I looked in the mirror, I thought I was dead. My face was covered in mud and blood, but I didn't remember anything that happened. I get in the shower, and before I'm out I hear the doorbell. I can't explain it, but I know it's for me. I know it's the cops, and I know their names. Sure enough, my mom calls me down, and everything I thought I knew was right. The cops ask me a bunch of questions, and then they ask if I vomited in the woods, and I feel it. There's something else with me, and it's about to answer this question for me. Before I can say yes, I hear myself calmly say no. I hadn't vomited in the woods. Before the police leave, they tell me that my friend was put into a psych hospital, and I was banned from the grounds. The police never came back, and I never saw my friend again. I found out later there were pieces of my friend's back that I had apparently bitten off in the vomit. Whatever she said happened that night made everyone think she was crazy. But I don't think she's crazy because I can still feel whatever it is in here with me. Every day I wonder what it's waiting for. Story time, it was worth it. About 7 years ago, I 24 female sacrificed my best friend. No, it's not what you're thinking, but it might be worse. A little backstory, my bestie, we'll call her Tori, and I went to New Orleans together for our senior trip. We found this fortune teller place and decided to give it a go. Tori went first, and the lady telling her fortune had all good things to say: wealth, love, happiness, and health. But when it came to my reading, everything was all bad. Unbearable loss, addiction, poverty, and sickness. I was a little bit devastated. Tori kept saying it was just a gimmick, but something in my gut told me it was the truth. Before we left New Orleans, I went back to the fortune teller, and she told me I could switch fates with Tori. She gave me 2 needles, and all I had to do was prick myself with the clean needle, and Tori with the rusty one. These needles cost me over $300. Part of me thought it was just to get money, but then I started to notice more and more how shitty my luck really was. So one day when I slept at Tori's, I did it. I stuck us with the needles, and nothing happened. But as time went on, something did happen. Tori's life started falling apart and mine began to thrive. Today I have $1 million business. I'm married, happy, and life is good. The last time I saw Tori, she was begging for change at the local supermarket, and she looked awful, so you know what? It was worth it. Storytime, I still hear it slithering. 7 years ago, I was an only child, and my family moved into this old run-down mansion. At the time I was only like 5, so my parents gave me the room closest to theirs. It also happened to be the biggest. The first months were great, but then I started to get really sick. I was always tired, and I would wake up with bruises all over my legs. My parents said I was just sleeping wild, and I believed them. Until I couldn't sleep one night. I was laying in bed, and I could hear what sounded like something wet and sticky moving across my floor. Remember, I'm 5, so I'm not looking at it. I'm screaming. My parents shoosh me back to bed, and 5 minutes after they leave, I hear it again. Something wet and sticky moving across my floor, getting closer and closer. I lay there squeezing my eyes shut until something warm and sticky covers my leg. I can see the lump under my covers, but before I can look, there's a pain in my leg that's so unbearable, I pass out. In the morning I check my leg, and there's a new bruise. I tell my parents everything, and they tell me not to worry. After that day, my parents start giving me what I now know is melatonin before bed. I would wake up every morning knowing this thing is eating me alive, but there's nothing I can do. Then a miracle happens when I turned 8. My parents adopt this 2-year-old girl named Katie. So because I'm an amazing person, I offer up my room so Katie can be closer to my parents. My mom looks me right in the eye and says, well, obviously that's why Katie is here. She'll make a wonderful meal. I still can't believe my parents know this happens and let it. But now my life is wonderful and pretty normal. Except for the times I can still hear it slithering to Katie's bed. Story time, I welcomed it in. If you've never played with an Ouija board, let this be your warning to never ever do it. In true cliché fashion, I was at a friend's sleepover, and one of the other girls brought the board. My friend's mom took one look at it and said not in her house. My toxic trait is I don't listen, so after everyone went to sleep I snuck and got the board. I was just joking around by myself, asking stupid things like, will I get a new dog, go on vacation, blah blah blah. I was having a full conversation with myself, and then spelled out the sentence you are welcome, and everything changed. It immediately got cold, and the air started to stink like rotten eggs. I didn't even know why, but I was so scared I threw the board back in the box, ran to my sleeping bag, and zipped myself in. I told myself I was being a scaredy cat and was about to unzip myself when I heard footsteps in the room with us. Then I heard a cracking sound that made me sick to my stomach, then another, and another. I laid in my sleeping bag and pretended to be asleep while the crunching and cracking kept happening. Just when I thought I would throw up, the cracking stopped, and the footsteps left. When I pulled back my sleeping bag, I immediately wished I hadn't. Every other girl in the room had a broken neck. They were all twisted, disfigured, and pale. I should have freaked out, but I didn't. I just got back in my sleeping bag and pretended to sleep. I was so terrified whatever did that was still close, so I stayed zipped in my sleeping bag until the police arrived the next afternoon. As the officer carried me out, I took one last look, and everything was different. It looked like the other girls were just sleeping, not disfigured and broken like the night before. The news said it was a gas leak, and I survived, because I was zipped in my sleeping bag. But here's the thing, when I got home I found that Ouija board under my bed, and when I took it out of the box, it thanked me. Storytime, I think it was an eyelid. I used to have this neighbor that was super friendly to all the guys. At the time I was 17, and trying to get some freedom from my parents, so this neighbor came in clutch. He would always invite a group of us guys over to his house so we could hang out and do things our parents would never let us do. He would cook and bake for us, and pretty much let us do whatever we want. After about a month of hanging out with this neighbor, there were 6 of us that pretty much went over to his place immediately after school. That is until we started going missing one by one. The first to go missing was Seth, and he was the youngest, only 15. The neighbor invited us over to talk about where Seth might be, and he made this chicken wing dip. Only it had a really funny aftertaste. I didn't want to be rude, so I finished my plate. About 3 weeks goes by, and another guy we hung out with regularly just stops coming to school, and no one can find him. The police are convinced they're runaways, but I don't think so. Again, the neighbor invites us over to talk about the newest missing guy, and this time, he serves chili. It's so amazing I eat like 3 bowls, and take some home to my family. One day after school I'm bored, so I figure I'll stop by the neighbor's, when he invites me and it smells really good. Like cake. The neighbor tells me he just frosted cupcakes, so of course I ask for one. As I'm eating I feel something in my mouth that doesn't quite fit the texture of a cupcake. When I take it out of my mouth, and look, I'm almost positive it's an eyelid. I lied about forgetting my mom needed me, and got out of there as fast as I could. I remember leaving the neighbor's house, and crossing the road, but that's all. I woke up in the hospital, and they found something in my system that knocked me out cold. By the time I explained I was at the neighbor's last and someone went to investigate, he had fled, and was never found. It's been 5 years, and I'm still so grateful for that eyelid.